Streaming now on IWTV. New Texas Pro. Check our schedule for all future New Texas Pro events, including the Texas Contender Series. Watch over 70 New Texas Pro shows anytime on demand. Featuring Stephen Wolf, Fly Death, Rachel Rose, and the Bounty Hunter, Brian Keith.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Business podcast. I am your co-host, JP John Podge from the Two Man Power Trip. Of course, joining me is the doctor himself, Dr. M. Lavie Marg. Love, what's going on? How you doing?
Hey, John. Good to see you. A difficult day for me. My mom actually just passed away, but I wanted to do this because take some time to reflect on my mom and sort of tell some niche wrestling stories which only other wrestling fans maybe in their 30s and 40s would understand.
Yeah, so sorry to hear about your mom. Terrible news, but it's funny, like when somebody passes, it's like, all right, let's, like, sometimes you want to focus on other things, you know what I mean? Especially wrestling fans, you want to focus on like some good times and some good stuff. So what did you kind of want to start off with? What did you want to just basically kick it off with?
Yeah, so in talking about my mom growing up in the late 80s, she was never like, what's this crap that you're watching or anything like that, right? Like some parents would be like that, but it was the late 80s, right? Because everything was violent or whatever. So I never remember her like being like, turn that off. And I actually went to my first pro wrestling show with my parents and a friend at Madison Square Garden. I think it was 1990, Hulk Hogan against the Canadian Earthquake. For some reason, I always call him Canadian Earthquake. From what I understand, that was a very short period of time, but it just stuck with me. So, I think we took the car down and actually parked in like one of those lots, like around the corner from that. And I actually went to my third wrestling show with my mom too, with my parents, when we saw Hulk Hogan against Ric Flair at Madison Square Garden.
Wow, it's a good one.
But yeah, so those are with a different friend. So those were special memories. And for me growing up, most of the time when I went to pro wrestling, it was in the winter, just because the days are longer and being Sabbath observant. If the show was typically on a Saturday night, it would have been impossible to make it on time. So something else that I remember is that my parents had a really long driveway, and it always felt like it was snowing or had just snowed right before like needing a ride to the Metro North train station. So those days I was very motivated, like with the shovel. My mom was like, if I could get the car out, I could take you. So I'm like, no problem, and I work on it all day to make sure that happened. Now, our parents and whatever, like who aren't bands, sometimes like a name just sticks with them. For some reason, the name Razor Ramon stuck with my mom. Like, I don't think she would have been able to pull him out of a lineup, but like just like maybe the R alliteration, double R's, like was just something where she would mention it once in a while. And I wasn't able to order all the pay-per-views, but what's good is that when they moved into their house in 1981, when I was 1 year old, the people before them had been stealing cable. They wouldn't have done it themselves, but basically they plugged in the TV and it was there. So I got access to all the cable channels and the pay-per-view channels at that time. You could hear it. It was kind of like scrambled. If you watch it, you kind of get dizzy, or some people talked about like that they would get used to it and kind of like put it together in their mind. So they weren't. My mom wasn't like order every pay-per-view, but in my teens in the Attitude Era, she was like pretty flexible on that. I would ask, and she'd be like, "Yeah, you can order that." And I said, "Yes." Nice. But my oldest sister lived in, or still lives there, but in Providence, Rhode Island. So I'd be checking the schedule whenever WWF or WCW were going to Providence. I'd be like, I think it's a good time to visit my sister now. So I'd get to see my nephews, but also get to see the wrestling. What was a priority? We won't we won't get into that. And probably like one of those like most random wrestling stories that only fans can understand. John, do you remember like in the 90s in the newspaper, there was like the WWF would work with a lot of like used car lots, and they'd be like, hey, you know, this wrestler is coming to the used car lot. It'd be like the day before like a show in like a major arena. So it'd be like a win-win, right? Because they'd get like a little ad for the show, but
and like Diesel is in town. Yeah.
Exactly. And it was free.
Yes. Yep.
But they're often in the middle of the day. So I'm not sure how this came about. I don't think I like asked to miss school. I knew like I wouldn't be able to do that. But my mom was like, yeah, I'll go. And like my parents went to see The Undertaker and Paul Bearer in like a used car lot in Westchester County, and they took pictures with him. It was like really funny because like they had no interest in it, but like just for me, like would like take the pictures and whatever. So that's kind of my random pro wrestling stories in remembering my mom, and it just shows, you know, how dedicated as a parent, like as parents now, right? Like whenever our kids find like random stuff, you know, you kind of want to support that as much as possible until it crosses over into something too weird or too annoying, and you just have to be like, no, I don't think so.
Definitely. So RIP Lavie's mom. So sorry to hear that. That terrible news to start off the day. But I guess we should maybe focus on some Triller news. If we're talking a little business of the business here, I feel like Triller's been just a hotbed of information going on recently.
Yeah, and this is thematic. Why the F you contact Bobby, which will make sense later. So, our friend Brandon Thurston really dropping two major articles, and they're both so important that I don't know if I could summarize them, but we'll go through them and all the other news about this. So, obviously, we've been talking about it for 5 years, John. Triller, especially the issues once they were purchased. First, they were like, I think when they were first on my radar, it was sort of like, okay, they're behind on payments to certain recording artists, but that's sort of like, you know, in another world. And then they kept trying to go public, and, you know, they never got there. And then it was sort of like, I'm not sure if you define it as like a reverse merger with like a Chinese financial and like tech company that kind of wants to be like TikTok, and kept waiting for TikTok to get banned, but never got there. But then it all crossed over into pro wrestling and the mess there. So it's all coming to wash right now. So Brandon Thurston's article on May 11th, AEW has filed a lawsuit against Triller TV and its parent company Triller Group, alleging the streaming platform owes Tony Khan's wrestling company just under $5 million in unpaid revenue from AEW pay-per-view and from proceeds for the now discontinued AEW Plus. AEW's lawsuit was filed on April 29th. The legal complaint alleges Triller's parent company used AEW-derived revenues to fund other businesses, including a social media platform that never took off, rather than paying AEW what it was owed. Triller's strategy of robbing revenues generated by Triller's distribution of AEW content to cover other of defendants' operating expenses negatively impacted its relationship and payments owed, according to AEW's attorney. But a few weeks before AEW filed its case, a separate lawsuit was brought by Triller TV against its own parent group. We'll talk about that later. Let me skip ahead. Replying to requests for comment, Triller provided post with a statement attributed to CEO of Triller, Wing Fai and we'll get into him a little later. We take these reports seriously and are reviewing the legal matters thoroughly. AEW's lawsuit details a business relationship with the streaming platform formerly known as Fight that mostly functioned well, aside from some slow payments, until 2024. The same year, the streamer was merged with its current parent company. At that point, AEW says Triller could and did use the revenue generated from its distribution of AEW content to pay for other operation expenses. AEW content drove 24% of all Triller Group's revenues, right? So we had talked about that, John, extensively. Basically, Phil, you know, the feeling was that Tony Khan was basically saving Triller by giving them access to that.
Yeah,
and it was a little
bit
revenue. Unclear. Yep. Yeah, it was a little bit unclear at that time. Like, was the money going through AEW first? Just the wording of it. Obviously, you know, Triller seemed to get it first. If they could hold back this $5 million. AEW's lawsuit also revealed how net revenues after sales tax and app store fees with Triller were divided. Court documents submitted by AW's attorney indicated AW was due 75% of the net revenue from pay-per-view and 65% from international sales. That was a split established in 2019. Before that, for AW's earliest pay-per-views, the net revenue were shared 50-50. For AW Plus, the wrestling company got 60% of net revenue, with Triller getting the other 40%. AW alleges that the parent exploited the gap in timing between the point of sale and when payments to AEW were due. That kind of feels, John, like that ECW thing where they were like, if only we had gotten, the payments, on time, kind of kept it going.
Yeah, like, no, we're great business. We just didn't get paid on time. Yeah, classic Heyman. Yep.
AW says it sent written demands for payment to Triller in each of January and March 2025. An April 2026 legal document shows AW's outline counsel claiming nearly $5 million. It's like to the penny in payments were owed by Triller, and that the amount is continuing to accrue interest at a rate of 2% per month in accordance with the contract. It's interesting, John, as clearly Triller was having its issues. Like, we were kind of like looking at it, like, when's AEW going to drop out? When's AEW going to drop out? And they started doing it like slowly, but it seemed kind of like either a business or a legal strategy, like make sure that they had their ducks in a row. Defendants failed to make the full payments, paying a fraction of the amount owed. Defendants collected and had it in its coffers from AEW viewers before wrongfully spending it on other ventures. So, as we know, Triller was delisted and then came back. Okay, so that's the first part. Now, this is such like a business of the business story, because like outside of the actual CEO of Triller, like, we know all these people and we've interviewed all these people.
Yeah.
So next up is Brett Lauderdale. And he said, people ask me all the time what's going on with Triller. So that's us, John. So let me attempt to translate. So this was Brett saying this. Let me attempt to translate Barrington's article a little further in plainer terms. Triller TV is basically the artist formerly known as Fight. It's the wrestling wing of the umbrella parent company and operates mostly independently of the rest of the parent. The Triller TV platform still works great, and it still has a sizable monthly subscriber base and accompanying revenue, in addition to pay-per-views. So I'm going to pause that a second. So, John, like, do you think that Brett's receiving less interruption than others? Like, I know it's good for his distribution because he likes the platform, but like, if he wasn't getting revenue from it, like, or like significant amount, like, I think he'd have to move on, right? Like, how much leeway does he have?
Honestly, it seems like the other people outside of AEW, which seems like it might be a larger chunk, so they're not able to pay them in full. I feel like you're getting a good chunk and a consistent chunk of that business to GCW, and all the smaller leagues are like, no, let's not pay them, maybe, but let's focus on GCW because they're our most consistent brand. Like, they're like every week or every couple days a week, they're putting shows on there. So I have a feeling that he's had less of an interruption. And really, we've interviewed him 11 times. He hasn't complained once about it. So obviously, they were paying him and not paying others. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, they treat me fine. And the person's like, well, they're an asshole to me. So he can't really say anything bad if they're not doing anything wrong to him per se.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the IWTV guy is like looking on, like, ha ha ha. I mean, he hasn't commented on this publicly, but obviously there's the IWTV, like that whole lawsuit and so on, which I think, like, to me, John, I don't know if you see it on your feed more or whatever. I feel like IWTV never really recovered from that. I know there's the Beyond Wrestling, but like, it just didn't feel like they were a thing much after this like fight.
I agree.
No pun
I don't think they recovered. Yep.
The Triller TV platform app still works great and still has a sizable monthly subscriber base. The issue is that while this wing in the entity operates independently, the revenue it generates still goes into the parent company's purse. And the parent company can do whatever it wants with those funds, even if it means neglecting some of its commitment to existing partners. Triller Fight was never Triller's main priority. The Triller TikTok app was. So while the revenue coming in and some folks continue to get paid, there are also many that aren't, and most aren't being paid in full or owed significant amounts. Here's what I gather. The parent company is indifferent to Triller TV and its money issues. The Triller TV entity is going to be sold, but they can't until the court gives the freedom to make a move without the parent company's consent. So while this is a pretty tough circumstance, it remains optimistic, and eventually this will be a resolution, and the company will continue on without the burden of an umbrella that is siphoning the revenues. Fingers crossed. There have been so many really good people involved with the fight over the years. Mike Weber, another former guest of the show.
Yes.
Keith Evans, Costa, and all the people overseas. Okay, so that's that part. Now, the first canary in the coal mine was really that punk Isaac, who runs Wrestle Arrival, who was pretty, forthright in terms of saying like, hey, I have this small promotion. I haven't been paid. Now, interestingly, John, I don't know if I've talked about this publicly before, but I forgot what it was, like whether we started talking about it or I was going to write an article or started tweeting about it. Somehow it like got on their radar, some of my existing contacts at Triller, and they were kind of like poo-pooing it.
Oh.
This is, I don't want to misrepresent their wording, but it's kind of like, this is a mistake or an accounting issue or whatever. And even Fightful picked up on it, and then they removed an article that covered it. So like they kind of convinced us maybe like it's not, as much, of an issue. But clearly
it could be. But clearly could be.
Yeah, clearly could be. Now, okay, so you're like, okay, Brandon, good work for the week. And then suddenly he drops another one. Brandon working with Jason.
He's a legend. He is a legend.
And most of these are now on Post Wrestling. So we love to see that all these people are coming together. Amid a separate lawsuit filed by Triller against its parent reveals unrealized sales talks with the likes of streaming television service Fubo and ignored communication from the parent company's executives. That would have been huge, John. Like, imagine you take this Triller thing, which is like kind of like a very niche thing, and you
Fubo's huge, gigantic. Like that would have been a huge win for them. Idiots. Ugh.
So in the lawsuit, Triller, filing under its corporate entity, Flips asked the Delaware Chancery to appoint its executives as the streamer's board of directors so it could explore sale or bankruptcy. I don't know as much about like these corporate things, obviously, but if you were acquired fully, even if you're a subsidiary, how do you have that opportunity to try and like disassociate yourself from the parent? Unless like certain obligations were being met, like at the time of acquisition. I don't know. The notice was issued by Triller CEO Costa Jordanov and President Eric Winter, addressing to TGI's board of directors executives, including CEO Wing Fai. The document appears to inform TGI of Triller TV's cash flow insolvency, which would prevent the company from paying AEW the $3.7 billion then owed. Months before AEW officially terminated and ultimately became $5 billion, AEW's lawsuit alleges that TGI drained Triller TV. Okay, so we talked about that. Triller TV, however, continues to operate according to its website. Due to lack of communication with NG, Triller TV executives claimed in their December notice that the streaming service was forced to obtain hard money loans, a type of high-interest loan often secured against real estate property to repay debts owed. As a result, Triller TV says it took over $600,000 in interest just to get $1.475 billion in funding. I feel like from the parent company, we were seeing filings about different loads and so on, at that time as well, just like to keep them afloat. And it's still not clear, like, did they give away bare knuckle, like to to cover these things? Are they still part of the company? It was kind of always weird also that DAZN was the one distributing bare knuckle, whereas this is like their primary property. So in January 2025, AEW demanded $1.5 billion by the end of January. On January 22nd, Winter and NG met at a Peninsula hotel in Beverly Hills, where NG committed to wiring funds to cover both AEW payments. However, NG allegedly did not respond to emails or texts and failed to deliver on its commitment. Triller TV was forced to take a high-interest hard money loan to cover the $1.5 billion payment. On March 12th, according to notice, NG called Winter, during which NG committed to wiring $1.5 billion, and so on. Let me just jump ahead to the good part. On April 1st, 2025, Winter and now former Triller board member Bobby Sarnavasht exchanged emails that are quoted in the notice. Winter wrote, "No response from you, NG, for 3 days. I'm getting worried again." Sarnash Shevit wrote, "What's the plan here? When going dark isn't going to resolve this issue. The company is further put into harm's way. Never seen an operator not respond in a crisis time. The next day, NG wrote back with what's said to be the only response throughout what's described as accurate. Strong language here, but I'm just quoting. Why the fuck you copied to Bobby? I think that's the best part of the whole story, John.
Yeah. Wow.
And maybe something actually Game Changer liked it on X that should be like a theme. I'm getting tired of the the song or album titles. This is a good title for
Yes.
referring to Bobby, who was a Triller board member at the time. December 2025 notice. Rather than addressing the imminent loss to our current customers, the threat of bankruptcy, or urgent funding needs, the CEO of our parent company chose to respond only to object to the inclusion of a board member on urgent governance-related correspondence. Triller TV runs the risk of ceasing operations next week if the wire doesn't land, and this turns into another unfulfilled promise. Skipping ahead here, NG allegedly rejected Fubo's. Okay, let me go a step back. During Triller TV's financial crisis, the notice stated 3 companies made offers to purchase the streamer, including Fubo. The offer was made for almost $20 million to buy Triller TV and the company's stake in boxing promotion Bare Knuckle. Fubo valued Triller at $3.6 million as part of the offer. So really, they were looking to buy it, to buy Bare Knuckle, and Triller TV would just be part of it. So this might actually be the answer, John, for why they didn't sell it. There's been so many filings and so many things connected to, like, now who owns Bare Knuckle, that I don't think Triller, this is my speculation, I don't think Triller could have actually sold it and done a deal like this.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So NG allegedly rejected Fubo's offer because Triller would never consider selling a single share of Bare Knuckle for anything less than $12 per share. Fubo TV, where it's now 20 cents. Fubo TV valued the BKFC shares at $1/4 of that, $3 per share. Triller TV executives claimed this rejection was made without any documented board process. Praetorian, a cybersecurity company, and separately a firm referred to as Swerve Equity. That's awesome. I think Swerve Equity should buy Triller TV. It's a swerve, bro. Also showed interest in buying Triller. Praetorian valued the streaming service at $3.5 million, though the document notes the company had been slow to engage. Now, what's interesting, as the stock collapsed, the public value, you could probably have bought the whole company, depending on the time. Swerve Equity is said to have offered 1% of its common shares and valued the business at $12.5 million. The notice says there were also active discussions with certain other parties, including TNA's parent company Anthem, as well as a number of others. So that's where we'll stop here on the Triller write-up by Post Wrestling and Brandon and Jason and so on. But just to look at this here, as you were mentioning, John, like, the brands that are on Triller TV. So Awesome Championship Wrestling, right? We've covered them for their success in Poughkeepsie. Like, either they're getting paid on time, whatever the small amount is, or it's just, their choice for distribution, because otherwise, why would they do this, right? There's Progress Wrestling, House of Glory, CMLL, and 1FW. So those are currently the biggest brands. I don't see, like, Ohio Valley. They used to have the, they put their free weekly show on there. Memphis Wrestling, they put their free weekly show on there. I'm not sure if they're gone, but I didn't see them in a search. Now, to top this off, John, the best part is that Wing Fi sent out some tweets yesterday in reference to Triller TV and Bare Knuckle. Combat sports is one of the few media categories where live events, fan intensity, media rights, and global expansion can all compound at once. So perhaps best part of the line, and this is, I guess, the second best line of Wing of the Week, we're just getting started.
There we go. Nice. Okay. All right. So interesting. AEW suing Triller. Triller is suing Triller Group, which owns Triller, the big company. So definitely something to keep an eye on. We'll keep an eye, obviously, on this show, but also the legend himself, BTC, because whenever he drops something, it's always good. You always have to read the whole thing. You know what I mean? There's other people who are like, read a little bit. Like whenever it's Brandon, there's so much in there. You got to read the whole article. Great stuff. But then, of course, everybody starts stealing the stuff. So you better attribute him when you're stealing the stuff too, you bastards.
Yeah, aggregate with with citation.
When you're looking at GCW, right? Because obviously we talked about them as a whole. I find this to be interesting. Obviously, Brett's been on the show 11 times. We love Brett, but we had Kevin Gill on this show. So what's going on with Gill and GCW?
Yeah, and I think Kevin dropped the issue originally publicly on our show, and things just increased from there. That was quite a while ago, John. So this issue, I think it was formally filed as like a lawsuit, much later, has carried on. So we hate to see when our friends are fighting or are having financial disputes. But according to Mike Johnson, a settlement has been reached in the lawsuit filed against Game Changer Wrestling by former announcer Kevin Gill before the United States District Court of New Jersey. A status report filed by Gill's side today noted, "Dear Judge Donio, counsel for both parties are pleased to inform the court that the parties have executed a final binding settlement agreement resolving all claims on this matter." So if it's all settled formally by July 13th, this will all be done. So the root of this matter was Kevin doing certain things according to the GCW directive, from what we understand, like setting up a Patreon, and that was really successful. And he was supposed to get 20% of the revenue, which, when you reflect back, that does sound high. But if that was the agreement and maybe the expectations weren't that, there could be so much made out of it, that maybe there was regret later. So it appears that, obviously it was settled. I'd assume that money changed hands between GCW to Kevin Gill, and Kevin has been sharing on social media, like not directly, but sort of like just saying like how happy he is, it's the best week ever, and so on. So resolved to his satisfaction.
Nice. What else is going on in the world of GCW?
Yeah, so rather than like belabor week to week, just a couple notable things. So the Tournament of Survival in Atlantic City, New Jersey, that's moving along well, relatively so. They're June 6th, I guess it's not too far away, so it has to move along even more so. But just fifth row is gone, sixth and seventh row available, plus GA, so pretty solid. And their highest profile death match tends to do well. Still a little bit early for June 27th in LA, but their most consistent and strongest market there. A couple rows go on there.
As far as NXT is concerned, how are they doing with their traveling and going outside of the Performance Center?
Yeah, so apparently not that great, because they are supplementing it with additional talent from the main roster, which I think is a good idea anyway. But there's who is there? Bailey,
Penta, and Grayson Waller.
Thank you, John. I knew Penta was on the tip of my tongue. I'm not as familiar with Grayson, but notable main roster talents. Now, what's amazing is that Buffalo River Works actually gives you the full number, or practically so if you do the math, on their website. So thank you, Buffalo River Works, because WrestleTix doesn't have a full map to count. So 1,015 tickets originally on sale. Now, as I look at this map, and I think it is tonight as we record this, 87% of tickets are sold, 128 remaining. So 800 and something, of course, sold. So that's solid. Canton, Ohio, at the Canton Civic Center, 983, and Johnstown, PA, the Cambria County War Memorial, 1,145. So 1,000 tickets on the road for a triple shot. The talent announcement only came later. What do you think, John? Is that, we know that they're using this for developmental, which makes a lot of sense. But, in terms of a business success, 1,000 with supplemental main roster talent, do you think that's a success?
Not really, just because I feel like they were wanting more and they didn't get more, and they were trying to find a way to somehow get a little bit more, and they really haven't been able to attain the success there. So I don't know. I guess it's one of those things like a lost leader. It's like, all right, well, we want to do it to get him out and learning the road and traveling and wrestling in front of a different crowd. So it's almost like you kind of expect to lose a bit. I know they try to supplement it with some stars, but it didn't work.
Yeah, and I think that sort of strategy is kind of the best way to go if it doesn't blow up the budget. You've heard about all these talent restructurings and so on. Like, if you have talents committed and they're not fulfilling all their dates, and we'll talk about those main roster house shows, I think, to supplement this discussion in a second, then it's not costing you much more to travel in the hotel. To advertise those talents. So I think that's a good way to go. But I agree. I think their expectations, and they have to be reasonable, are probably more than 1,000. I think, maybe like 17, 1,800 would make a lot of more sense. So what do you think, John, of all the house shows announced? 10 relatively 10 house shows announced on the main roster for this summer?
I like it. I feel like enough of the guys were complaining that they want to do more house shows. So it's about time. I think 10 is a good number to start with. I kind of wish there was more, but decent to do an Allentown, PA. So it seems like they're doing some good towns. I like it. I thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, and actually Allentown was on my mind directly as well. Is that far from you, John?
About an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. So it's not terribly far.
Okay, not bad. It's sort of like a day trip if you wanted to
Yes.
do
Yep.
the PA.
Yep.
Scene. Yeah, I think that'll do well. It's also like a good test of like, obviously they're not using Roman Reigns and so on, but if they have Cody Rhodes, depending on most of the top stars or half of the top stars, the most profile stars on the roster, it's a good test of like how well can we do on the house shows. I'm just curious if this was like working with the towns or just booking the events, just because they seem very always trying to maximize every opportunity. So if this is a test or just there's something more to it, I don't see like the Allentown Chamber of Commerce being like, okay, we really need this one WWE show that'll do a few thousand people. It'll be so great for tourism or whatever. But sometimes they're able to do things like that.
Yep. Definitely. Now, as far as selling some tickets, what about TNA? How are they doing? Because it seems like NXT's not doing too hot. What about TNA?
So TNA kind of looking the same, especially when we like put them up side to side, where actually this show would have occurred yesterday as we're recording this, so we'll have to look later for a final number, but I don't think it would have swung so much. Sacramento, May 14th, just about 1,000. As we're recording this, just about 1,000 tonight, so a little bit of a change up there. As we get the final numbers, June 6th, 909 in Denver. And the next night, 671, the Agganis Arena in Boston, 1,063 for June 28th advance. Albany, 276. So there's not a huge demand yet. And 283 for the double shot in Albany. The Chicago pre-sale has begun. I don't have any numbers on that yet. So kind of like they're doing about the same as NXT. I think their highest profile events should exceed, the average, but maybe less now than a NXT premium live event or whatever they call it, the type that will air next time on the CW.
When you're looking at all the like lockdown in Chicago and stuff, are the big shows at least drawing as far as that? Because it seems like some of the smaller shows aren't, but are the big shows like that still drawing? Because last year they drew well.
Yeah, I think they're drawing, but not to that. I don't think there's that push of like the record breaker type of shows. But I don't think there's always a correlation with the ratings. And we were talking about when the ratings were being reported high, and I know Dave Meltzer and others are talking about Nielsen kind of like continuing to experiment with their formula. It's not helping pro wrestling. NXT, right, just did a record low rating. So what do you think about the TNA rating now on AMC now being like near the lows in like the mid 100,000s?
Which is crazy because it was basically 250, 275, like kept going up and up and up. So I'm not sure what to make of it. Maybe that people aren't into what they saw the last couple weeks. Maybe creatively it's not as good as it once was.
Yeah, we have to see. Like, I always like to look at it. Usually it's broken down by quarters, but I like to look at it in 10-week intervals. But like, it has been a few weeks where things have been down. So certainly something to watch. I think doing 160,000. I'm not sure what AMC is averaging these days or this year, but I think that would still be pretty solid. But obviously, he'd like to tack on another 100,000 on that, especially when it basically raises the number by 50%.
Yep, for sure. Now, how about some here and there? You got an interesting one. What the heck is going on here? What is this? Atomic Wrestling?
Yeah, so they've been around a while. Atomic Legacy Wrestling. They're in Florida. They've done shows for a number of years at the Ocean Center, the site of what, John?
Bash at the Beach.
Exactly. That's what I always think about. And
Yes.
much less significant. Also, I think the site of AEW's second or third show. And they used to be there for like thematic, I think like sort of a crossover into like a video game or convention type of thing. But Atomic Legacy goes big or goes home. So they're booking the Ocean Center on July 4th. They've moved their time down because there's been some complaints. People want to see the fireworks at the beach. But when you look at the tickets sold, it's basically like most of the front row. And now they're going to Lakeland, the RP Funding Center. So this was a popular Ring of Honor spot. I think AEW has run there. Pretty big place as well. You could certainly configure it to different things, but not the typical pro wrestling venues. So everyone has a strategy, and obviously they've been around a while, so maybe it's sort of working for them, but that's just a curiosity and something to watch.
Now, I wanted to mention this to you because I don't know if this was on your radar or not, but I saw this popped up and I got news of this like a week ago or so from a buddy of mine who I don't know how he knew, but obviously he knows somebody in AEW got this information. But did you see this? MyAEW.com, the new MyAEW app, which is now available on Roku and Roku TV. The service will eventually be available Fight TV, Apple TV, and Android TV. So Kiswi, the global leader in streaming technology and services, and All Elite Wrestling AEW, one of the most dynamic brands in professional wrestling today, announced the global launch of My AEW, a new digital platform for All Elite Wrestling, powered by Kiswi. The platform gives fans immersive access to live and on-demand events outside the United States and Canada, a dedicated FAST channel with ad-supported viewing available to fans globally, and more exciting features coming in the near future. MyAEW.com platform is designed to bring the global AEW fan base an immersive digital experience connecting fans with the best in-ring action, behind-the-scenes moments, and exclusive digital content, laying the foundation to become the central hub for all fans of professional wrestling. What do you think about this little MyAEW? Throwing you a little curveball here, Lavie.
Yeah, John. No, it actually provides even more context to our main story today, right?
Yes,
Because,
exactly. Yes.
something like this doesn't happen overnight, and I'd imagine when AEW is following, all the issues with Triller and then start experiencing them, it kind of pushed to be like, okay, let's get out of this as soon as we can. We'll make sure that we have the documentation in terms of late financing, so we can build up the lawsuit, but also. Triller has been a important distribution platform for us, especially in certain countries that there's no other way of getting it in a traditional sense. So, start exploring this relationship and building it out. And whether AEW had a contract that had some exclusivity and then Triller TV violated that, I haven't seen anything like that, so I'm assuming not. Or it's sort of like they can migrate as they see fit. It just takes some time to build something out like this. So this seems like the best way to go. You want to have like integration with like you were mentioning with some of the other platforms. Like now a big thing, of course, is like if you're on Amazon to just add that, as an add-on subscription model, maybe even well, although people are talking about like things are looking bleak, right, with like Paramount and their purchase of Warner Brothers and whatever it may be. But if the relationship continues, or while it's ongoing for the next couple of years, this would be an interesting like thing to add on to that service as well, just because otherwise it gets like very complex.
You gotta love it. AEW, my AEW. I wonder if they'll do this and maybe even add more to it, and then obviously maybe add more to the YouTube channel if the WBD stuff obviously ends, if that relationship ends. But there's always Amazon Prime, right? That's always kind of hanging out there as well.
Yeah, I think it's sort of Tony Khan has to reframe his thinking, at least his strategies that he's talked about publicly. He just has been so loyal to Warner Brothers Discovery, and look how he's repaid. I mean, so far he's repaid
Yeah.
well, right? But as was reported, like not to have a conversation with CW about Ring of Honor, or even AEW, like you need more partners, and no one knows things better than Ari Emanuel. Going back to our Ultimate Fighters discussion, where he UFC was doing great with Spike TV, and Ari Emanuel was concerned like you need more platforms, and he was totally right.
Man, just kind of crazy when you just think about what could happen and this and that. But I think AEW will land on his feet. I think they'll be fine. And if you think about it, WBD, they own what, 9 or 10% of AEW. So I wonder how that would kind of shake out as well.
That's a really interesting question. I'm curious like how those things are resolved when there's a merger. Maybe like you're trying to maximize the revenue post merger, so it might be something where you sell it back to AEW, maybe even at a lower value, but you can now say, right, like some people are valuing AEW right like at $100 million or whatever. Like if
I
you
even
get
saw
that,
him valued at 1 billion.
$1
So,
billion. Okay, I was
yeah,
I was thinking that,
yeah.
right, but okay, so let's say you could get a quick $100 million, or maybe even like a discount, so AEW
Mhm.
has its full value back, 75 million or whatever, or you can
Yep.
sell it to someone else. What do you care? Like
Right.
someone
Right.
even that AEW doesn't want to be in business, right? 75 or 100 million. So obviously that something like that helps, but yeah, I think it's overemphasized that Tony Khan would be like funding a losing business where it's like tons of losses over years. He is, looking at the bottom line. But you can certainly take AEW, and it has to be, if it's in a different form, you don't have to have a roster that's not as large, and multi-day tapings. There's ways to be more careful about it, but he definitely wants to run a challenger brand, and he can do that as much as he sees fit, even if there are challenges with distribution.
One final thing I wanted to mention, RIP Barry Blaustein, the man from Beyond the Mat. Great movie, arguably the greatest wrestling documentary of all time. RIP to Mr. Barry Blaustein, former guest of the Two Man Power Trip. He was a great interview.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that. Yeah, I saw it in the theaters by myself. It was kind of empty, but I loved it. And then I saw it multiple times at home. It holds up very well, and I wonder if anyone ever asked him, and unfortunately it'd be hard to now get the clarity, but like how much unseen footage from ECW's pay-per-view debut might there have been, those sort of
Yeah.
things. So that would be really interesting to look at, as well. But love the documentary. I would say it's either number one or number two in the same time period, Wrestling with Shadows.
Yes.
So depending on
Yes.
somebody's taste and preference and historical significance.
Definitely agree with that. All right, so let's wrap up this bad boy. Head towards the plugs. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Two Man Power Trip. How about you, Lavie?
Yeah, follow me on X at LavieMarg, LAVIEMARG. Check out the Ultimate Fighters book, Donald Trump, Dana White, and UFC's Road to the White House. And I would say, most significant for me this week, please think about donating to your favorite Alzheimer's or dementia charity. There's really no cure, but there are things that could help with this, as well as supportive care. So please think about doing so if you love the show, in keeping my mom in mind.
Awesome. Good stuff, Lavie. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. We'll see you right back here next time on the Business of the Business. See you next week, folks.